The Florida Gators are traveling to Neyland Stadium as 10.5-point dogs to face the Tennessee Volunteers. This is a pivotal game for both team seasons. Obviously, a big rivalry is going to be a huge emotional game. But before we get into all that, we do have a Twitch account. We do watch parties and things like that. We're actually doing a watch party for this game. So go over there, follow, and stay tuned for that. We know Florida's been struggling these last couple of weeks. Drew, what are some things you think that they're going to have to do in this game to turn that around?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think Billy Napier needs to come to the realization that Anthony Richardson is just not going to be the offense for this Florida team this year. At least not early on. I mean, this dude, me and you and the people watching this video have thrown the same amount of touchdown passes as Anthony Richardson has thrown this year. He's thrown 4 interceptions. He's just lost confidence in himself. It is all mental with Anthony Richardson. We all know he has this elite playmaking ability and athleticism, and he can run and do all this crazy stuff, jump. He just hasn't put it together mentally, and he's struggled throughout the first 3 games. Maybe the Utah game he played okay, but I mean, he still didn't throw a passing touchdown. He still didn't look good throwing the ball in that game. He just made a lot of plays with his legs. And Florida has really good running backs. I really love Florida's running backs, and they run hard, and they do perform at a very high level and have produced a lot of yards for this Florida offense. And I don't know why Billy Napier keeps trying to go away from it and letting Anthony Richardson try to throw down the field and make these plays he's obviously not comfortable doing. I mean, there's multiple times where Anthony Richardson is throwing into double coverage. There's plays where he's throwing interceptions because him and the receiver aren't on the same page. The receiver will have an option route, and the receiver will go because the corner is kind of just sitting and not really going with the go route. And Anthony Richardson, for some reason, doesn't read that, and he's over here trying to throw a hitch like we saw against Kentucky, and, it was a pick six taken the other way. And that's just all mental. I mean, you just got to know these things if you're an elite quarterback and you want to play at an elite level. You got to be able to read those option routes, and you got to be on the same page with your receiver. So with that being said, you're going up against a Tennessee defense, which isn't great, but it's not bad. I think it's improved a little bit this year, particularly with the run. And I think Florida's really going to have to take advantage of that in this game. They got to keep the ball out of Anthony Richardson's hands, I think, as much as possible. You can't allow him to get in his head again. He's going to be playing in a tough environment. Neyland Stadium, when the crowd's juiced up in big games, when it's a sold-out SEC game. But moving on to Florida's defense, the production still hasn't been great. I think Florida's defense has improved some, but they're still giving up 373 yards per game. I know they've gone against some pretty decent offenses in Utah and Kentucky. But I still think Florida's a little too talented to be giving up as many yards as they are, especially on the ground, and especially in that South Florida game, Aiden. Do you think it's still a scheming issue that's going on with Florida that's kind of similar to what happened last year? Or do you think the lack of production on offense is really keeping the Gators on the field more, and do you think they're just getting tired as the game goes on?
I do not think it's a scheme issue. I like what this new DC has going with this Florida defense. I also like how they're aggressive at the point of attack. All 11 guys are flying to the football. Their DBs are coming up and tackling pretty well. The main issue with this Florida defense that I have is their linebacker play. Any misdirection, eye candy in the backfield is going to get those linebackers flying out of the box or flying in the wrong direction, especially like zone split insert. They were following the H-back. I guess that was their read, and they were taking themselves out of the play, and the running back was hitting it play side A consistently. Go back and look at that South Florida game. That happened so many times that either the linebacker coach or the DC came out late in the first half and was like, follow the running back wherever he goes. And that's where you saw South Florida adjust and start doing a read off of that and pulling the quarterback to that strong side. So it wasn't a schematics issue. Also, what you said about the offense getting shut out and not having any production, that definitely is a major factor because this Florida defense was fired up at the beginning of the game. And then as they just kept staying on the field longer and longer, having more and more plays, they just kept getting tired. So that's another thing for this Florida defense is going to have to improve, especially with the offense Josh Heupel runs with spreading these wide receivers out in these crazy splits and making everybody in the box fit their gap. If there is one mistake from these linebackers, Jabari Smalls, who I think is going to play, is going to cut it straight up the middle of the field. So that transitions into the Tennessee offense, which obviously we know since Heupel's taken the helm has completely exploded. Hendon Hooker's become one of the best quarterbacks statistically in college football. Jabari Smalls has been playing way above the caliber of a player he is, in my opinion. I'm a Tennessee fan saying this. And that's going to be the main key to victory for this Tennessee team and this Florida team is, can we stop the run? Because like I just said, the splits are going to be crazy. The RPO is going to make the DBs respect these receivers. And it's going to be a hat on a hat in the box. And these linebackers are going to have to step up. We know Tennessee loves to use tempo, motion, and shifts to confuse the defense. And what I saw last week, South Florida was basically doing the same thing, using shifts right before they snapped the ball forcing the Gators front seven to do all this movement, and it was confusing the D linemen and especially the linebackers, which, as I was saying earlier, were not playing well. So that's a main key for both of these teams. Who's going to win the front seven?
Yeah, I agree. And we've already done a Tennessee preview and prediction. We know pretty much everyone knows what their offense is. And me and you have watched film on them. I mean, we love what they do with the wide splits, spreading the box out, all that good stuff. I mean, it really is beautiful to watch, and it really does force teams to have to play perfectly. I mean, this is a Tennessee offense. You can't make mistakes against them, especially in the linebacker group. And the Florida's linebackers just haven't really impressed me too much this year in terms of just stopping the run. We've seen it in South Florida. We've seen it in Kentucky. We're just kind of getting gashed, 5, 6, 7 yards at will. And that's just not going to be able to fly in this game if you're a Florida fan or a Florida player. I mean, Tennessee is already hard enough to stop as is through the air. The last thing you want to do is have them get going in the run game. So as far as Florida, I don't really know. The spread's 10.5-point favorites. I don't know if we mentioned that already. I think you did. I don't know in any scenario where Florida's just going to be able to keep up with Tennessee. I just think Tennessee's way too talented offensively. I think Florida, we've seen what South Florida was able to do. We saw what Kentucky was able to do. I think teams are starting to get the film on Florida's defense. They're knowing how to attack. Like you said, they're throwing out a lot of motion. South Florida did. And I think Tennessee's going to do the same thing, and it's going to be hard to stop. You have all these receivers split out. Everyone's just spread out all across the field, and you throw these motions in, and Florida's defense is just going to get confused. It's just a recipe for disaster. I'm just kind of going all over the place right now talking about it because it kind of gives me chills thinking about what Tennessee's offense is about to do to this Florida defense. And I'm a Georgia fan. I don't like either one of these teams, so I'm not trying to play just biased to Tennessee or whatever. I just think Tennessee's a much better team in this game. But with all that being said, I just think Florida has way too many question marks heading into this game.
That's definitely some good points about Florida's question marks. A couple things I'm concerned as a Tennessee fan. Number one, penalties in the Akron game in the first half bit us in the ass. We didn't produce in the first quarter like we normally do. I think we averaged the most points on our first drive last year out of any team in college football, and I think we averaged like top 3 for points in the first quarter. And Akron stopped us on our first couple of drives, so we cannot bite ourselves in the foot against a Florida team because we got to take them out this game early. We know Florida, they're not a team that's going to fight back and claw back and make a comeback. They're going to quit when they get down. We got to take them out the game, take their fight early, and it's at Neyland Stadium. Rocky Top is going to be playing very loudly. Anthony Richardson, his head is going to be like scrambled eggs, right? Mm-hmm. And we can't give this team a chance to stay in the game. And also, Jeremy Banks and Tennessee's linebackers going into the season was the biggest question mark for me. But I think they've stepped up in the run game, and they're going to have to continue to do that because this Florida run attack is vicious. In the zone scheme and the gap scheme, they are vicious, especially like you said earlier with the staple of running backs that they have. Tennessee's DBs are really questionable in run fits too, so Tennessee's linebackers and DBs are going to have to swarm to the football and really commit to stopping this run because, like we said earlier, that's the only thing that's really been working for this Florida offense. And watching film on the Florida offense, it's obviously they are a heavy run, and they use the run to set up the play action, right? But they're doing all this intricate deep shot stuff off the play action. But you can't do that with Anthony Richardson. We've seen these first couple of games. He's making the mistakes. He's throwing it into double coverage. He's running into pressure when he has a perfect pocket sometimes. Like, you got to be able to cut the playbook down and simplify it, make the reads easier, make the throws shorter and quicker for him. But that all comes after you establish the run game. And if they can get the run game established for this Tennessee game, that's going to give them a chance to stay in this game.
Yeah, Florida, and this is a rivalry, right? It's hard to predict blowouts in a rivalry, regardless of the talent level of both teams. We've seen multiple rivalries where one team might not be as good as the other team, but the one team that's not as good still finds a way to pull out the win or keeps it very competitive. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if this game was competitive at all. I still don't think Tennessee has put themselves in a point yet where they're just levels ahead of like a Florida or a Kentucky or those really good SEC East teams that just aren't great. I don't know if Tennessee's really separated themselves just yet. I think they're heading in the right direction, but as far as this year, I mean, Florida's just had their number for all these years in the recent past. And I know you mentioned earlier about Florida quitting when when things get tough, and that is true during the game. When Florida does go down, they go down, and there's really no fight for this team. But I still don't think they're at the point now. They're not under Dan Mullen anymore. I think Billy Napier has his team understanding like their season's not over. I mean, just because they lost to Kentucky, Florida could still maybe run the table. I mean, maybe you get some miracle wins over Georgia and whoever else and, find your way in the SEC title game. So, I mean, this game's still a big game for Florida. The season's not over. You're still going to get Florida's best effort. And, I mean, they're going to come in motivated. They're at Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee's a team to beat in the SEC East, I believe. They really are. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get into my prediction here. Tennessee's 10.5-point favorites. I know I just kind of boosted up Florida in the past minute or so, but I just don't know if Florida has enough on offense to keep it going. I think if they keep the ball on the ground, I think they could keep it under 10 points. I think Florida will be able to find the end zone a few times if they run the ball. But I just think Tennessee's offense is way too powerful. I think the running game is really going to get going in this game, especially after watching what Florida did against South Florida. I love what Tennessee does with the wide splits. And if they throw in some motion, they get these Florida players out of position, which is exactly what Tennessee's offense is meant to do. It's meant to get players out of position. I think Tennessee's going to be able to execute that, and I think Tennessee's going to put up a lot of points in this game, potentially in the 40s, mid-40s, high 40s even. But there is no telling in a rivalry game. But with that being said, I'm going to take Tennessee in the 10.5 points.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point about rivalry games, of course, especially one like this one where Florida's had Tennessee's number so many times over the last couple of years. As far as my pick goes, of course, we know Heupel has a dominant offense, and Hooker's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC right now. But with that being said, this Florida team, they do play really fast on defense, and they do have some really great DBs who lock on man coverage. And Hooker, as we know, any Tennessee fan will tell you this, he has a tendency to let that ball sail sometimes. And if he lets that ball sail against this Florida secondary, they can get some picks. And, if they can win the turnover battle, they have a great chance to make this game close. Now, as far as the Florida offense goes, they're going to have to lean on the run game very, very heavy, which I think they're going to do. They're going to try and take the wind out of the Tennessee's offensive sails. I think they are going to condense the playbook and make it, quick throws, RPOs, and really, really lean on that run game. Because now they know they have multiple backs. I mean, they've known this, but they're going to use all those backs against this Tennessee team, really eat into that time of possession. If they win the turnover battle, they can pull the tide to win this game. But I think Tennessee's going to win. 10.5 is a little too much for me. As a Tennessee fan, I'm always a little bit of a pessimist. Cedric Tillman and Jabari Smalls, we don't know if they're going to play. We didn't mention that throughout the video, but I think it's mental warfare. Me and Drew are both in the same field of thing. We think they're going to play. But with all that being said, I like Tennessee to win, but I think Florida will cover.
Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video, guys. I know we haven't posted in a couple days. We're kind of mixing up our schedule a little bit in terms of how we want to do things. We're going to do another preview prediction this week. I don't know what game yet, and I know you've seen it at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to have overlay of our Twitch down below. Please be sure to go in the description and click on the link and follow our Twitch. We're probably doing a morning show this Saturday, kind of around the same time College Game Day does their thing, and right before the noon games, and then I think we're going to do a little watch party for the Tennessee-Florida game. So we would love to have you guys there. This is something we've wanted to do for a long time. And now that I think we're getting to the point now where we're ready to start streaming and really getting engaged with our viewers and everything. So we'd love to see you guys there. But leave down below in the comments what you guys think, what's going to happen in this game, what are some keys for both Florida and Tennessee. And yeah, that's going to be it. See you guys in the next video.